The night Jasmine Crockett destroyed Kash Patel on live TV. Picture this. It's a nationally televised CNN town hall in Washington, D.C. The studio lights are blazing like a battlefield. In one corner, Kash Patel, Trump-era official, smooth talker, the kind of guy who walks into every room like he owns it. In the other corner, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, freshman Democrat, often dismissed, frequently underestimated. What happened next would become the most talked-about political moment of the year. But here's the thing, it wasn't supposed to go this way. Patel came loaded for bear, ready to demolish what he saw as an easy target. Crockett? She came with something far more dangerous. Receipts. The setup. Before Crockett even stepped on stage, Patel was already throwing haymakers. "Let's be honest," he said, that trademark smirk plastered across his face. Jasmine Crockett is a textbook case of what happens when social media stardom is mistaken for national security expertise. The audience reaction split like a cracked mirror. Conservative supporters erupted in cheers and applause. But on the other side, sharp inhales, narrowed eyes, the unmistakable tension of people who'd just been insulted by proxy. Patel wasn't done. She's loud. She's flashy, but let's not pretend that qualifies someone to weigh in on matters involving classified intelligence or life-and-death decisions. We're living in dangerous times, and the last thing we need is a performative progressive treating defense policy like a TikTok debate. This wasn't just an attack. It was an ambush master's commentary, and the woman he was targeting hadn't even walked on stage yet. Enter the storm. Then came the announcement, "Please welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett." A single spotlight swung to stage left, and she stepped into it like a blade sliding from its sheath. No smile, no wave, just poise wrapped in deep blue fabric and a gaze that could cut marble. Her stride was deliberate, the walk of someone who didn't need to speak loudly because her presence was already doing the talking. In her left hand was a black leather folder, clean, precise, sealed like a classified vault. She placed it on the table with a soft thud that somehow felt louder than any applause. For the first time all night, Patel stopped moving. The blitz. But Patel wasn't about to let silence take hold. Before Crockett could even adjust a microphone, he launched his assault. "Tell us, Congresswoman." His voice dripped with condescension. "What was your last direct intelligence briefing on a live threat vector? Not summaries, not filtered reports. I'm talking classified. Real-time, protocol decision-making." He didn't wait for an answer. You want to sit at this table like you're an equal, but you've never even been in the war room, have you? You've had cameras, tweets, and hashtags, not enemies and deadlines. Nervous laughter rippled from his supporters, but it wasn't confident laughter. It was desperate, insecure, the kind that needs volume to hide fear. Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't look away. Behind her stillness was a different kind of fire, not reaction, but readiness. Even moderator Chris Wallace had to intervene. "Mr. Patel, please let her speak." But Patel dismissed it with a shrug. "The audience deserves clarity, Chris. Not rhetorical gymnastics, not moral grandstanding. Clarity. And that doesn't come from someone who's never held a national security clearance." Then he leaned toward Crockett with that smirk. "Frankly, you are out of your depth." The moment of truth. That's when everything changed. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, not in outrage, not in defense, but with the unshakable calm of someone who had brought a loaded dossier to a knife fight. She placed her palm flat on that black folder and spoke with surgical precision. "Let's start here. Oversight is not a talking point. It's not a campaign slogan. It is the constitutional responsibility of this body, of me, as an elected member of Congress, to ensure that those entrusted with power do not abuse it." Her eyes locked on Patel like a surgeon about to make the first incision. "That responsibility includes national security, Mr. Patel, which means your attempt to reframe me as an outsider isn't just disrespectful, it's factually wrong." Slowly, deliberately, she opened the folder. The sound of the clasp unlocking was barely audible, but somehow it echoed through the studio. She lifted a document stamped with the seal of the Department of Defense. "You've spoken about who's qualified, who's experienced, who belongs at this table. So let's talk about qualifications. Not mine, but yours." The bombshell. The massive screen behind them flickered to life, displaying an official Inspector General report for everyone to see. This is from June 2022. Page 47, paragraph 3. It names you, Mr. Patel, directly. She paused, letting the truth take oxygen. The report outlines multiple breaches of protocol regarding classified material, including unauthorized disclosures and circumventing secure communication systems. For the first time all night, Patel didn't interrupt. He didn't smirk. He didn't speak. His jaw clenched, his shoulders pulled back as if bracing for impact. But the blow had already landed. These aren't rumors, Crockett continued with quiet devastation. They are not headlines. They are findings from the Inspector General of the Department of Defense. You question my qualifications while sitting on a record like this. The audience fell into stunned silence. Patel, who moments earlier had flooded the room with noise, now looked smaller under the studio lights. The knockout punch. But Crockett wasn't finished. She reached for another document, thicker, annotated, well-read. Let me draw your attention to what followed those security violations, she said, displaying internal Pentagon communications on screen. 2 employees who flagged protocol violations were reassigned within 48 hours with no formal justification on record. Then came the final blow, a sworn affidavit from James Keller, former Deputy Director of Operations. Mr. Keller states under oath that 3 days after the initial violations were documented, you held a closed-door meeting where you said, quote, "We need to clean house of anyone who doesn't understand how things work now." The quote appeared on screen in bold letters beneath Keller's notarized signature. The air in the room seemed to disappear. That's when Patel finally cracked. This is a goddamn setup. You're twisting facts and spinning narratives like some kind of partisan hitwoman. His voice cracked, stripped of its usual swagger. Gone was a control predator, replaced by a cornered animal lashing out in desperation. The final word. As Patel's composure crumbled, Crockett rose to her feet with deliberate grace. When she spoke, her voice didn't punch through the silence. It replaced it. There's something deeply wrong with the way we equate volume with value in this country. Some people think the person who shouts the loudest wins. But let me say this clearly. The loudest person in the room is not always the right one. She gestured toward the document still glowing on screen. I didn't come here to win a volume contest. I came here to remind you that substance still matters. I bring evidence. You bring ego. I bring facts. You bring fury. Then came the line that would echo across every replay, every social media clip, every news segment for weeks to come. National security requires ethics, not theatrics. She didn't shout it. She didn't need to. The sentence landed like judgment itself. The earthquake, the applause that followed wasn't celebratory. It was reverent. A standing ovation not for charisma, but for clarity. People rose to their feet with the urgency of a courtroom reacting to a verdict too powerful to ignore. Phones came out. Even those who hadn't cheered earlier stood stunned, understanding they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. In the middle of it all, Kash Patel remained seated, frozen. His hands, once animated and dismissive, were now clasped tightly together. He couldn't interrupt because he couldn't. Not anymore. The very documents he'd spent the evening mocking had risen like a tidal wave and buried him. The aftermath. Within hours, headlines exploded across every major network. The Washington Post. Congresswoman Crockett flips the room in explosive national security showdown. Reuters carried the story to 40 countries. Even Fox News scrambled to contain the damage. The phrase "Don't Patel this" began trending on social media. T-shirts reading "Bring receipts" like Crockett sold faster than printers could restock them. In classrooms across America, teachers showed the clip asking, what made her effective? One student's answer captured it perfectly. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. The legacy. What happened that night became known as the Crockett effect. Victory through evidence, not ego. Political consultants rewrote their playbooks. Debate clubs memorized the timing. Capitol Hill staffers started bringing binders instead of bluster to every hearing. Kash Patel disappeared from television, his media empire crumbling under the weight of his own exposed contradictions. Meanwhile, Crockett's campaign raised $1.4 million in 72 hours, not from super PACs, but from teachers, postal workers, nurses, and veterans who saw themselves in her clarity and courage. The real victory. But here's what made this moment truly revolutionary. In an age where the loudest voice usually wins, where aggression gets mistaken for being right, Jasmine Crockett proved something profound. She showed that preparation is power, that documentation can be weaponized, that truth, when delivered with precision rather than panic, can obliterate months of spin in a single sentence. She didn't come to that studio with legacy or establishment backing. She was a first-term congresswoman walking into a trap set by someone with years of Washington muscle. But that imbalance became her strength, because while he brought volume, she brought verification. The injustice of being underestimated, dismissed, and talked over didn't silence her. It became fuel. And when she opened that black folder, the room had no choice but to listen. In the end, Jasmine Crockett didn't just survive a political ambush. She transformed it into a masterclass on what happens when truth meets power, when substance confronts spectacle, and when someone refuses to come unarmed to a battle of wits. The studio lights may have dimmed, but the lesson blazed on. In politics, as in life, it's not about who shouts the loudest. It's about who brings the receipts.